Hello, YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Cat
Hello.
and Woof. So today we are talking about
Talking
a
about,
show that we just
yes,
watched.
so he's brand new to the show, like has not heard anything about it or seen anything about it before we watched the show. I have.
And we just went ahead and we marathoned the whole freaking thing,
All of season 1, there's going to be a season 2.
all of season one. There is going to be a season two. One thing about this show that was kind of surprising, but I guess, there was already such a loyal fan base.
Huge fan base, yes. That was all excited for this show years and years ago.
Right. So there was already a lot of hype. This became one of the most watched animated animated programs
Mhm.
on television or streaming, surpassing even The Simpsons.
It's funny because if you notice, the hair is different on Alistair than in the show.
Oh, and the
Yeah.
screen grab you got there.
Yeah.
So he's changed a little bit since the
Yep.
pilot.
Since the pilot on YouTube. Star rated here. Started right here.
Started right here on YouTube. So I'll give my take. I'll give my take since I'm newer to the series, and it made me think of a lot of things. One thing in particular is definitely a huge influence on the show is that it is so close to feeling like an Invader Zim show.
Yeah, she's been a huge fan. Vinzi has been a huge fan of Invader Zim forever. So it's probably where that's coming from.
And that doesn't bother me. Inspiration can come from a lot of places.
Yeah.
I will say it feels so in that style. It feels like this could have been a show by, I believe the guy's name is Johanan Vasquez.
I think so,
I'm
yes.
probably saying that wrong. Doing my best. But a little bit. So I would hope that they would at least use him in a certain sense in the next season, just because,
the guy that made Invader Zim, or
yeah, the creator of Invader Zim. I would hope that he has a part moving forward, because the who's the little assistant girl in the hotel?
Vaggie?
Not Vaggie. The little tiny one.
She's the maid, but yes, I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Her name.
Basically, just a Gur character.
Literally, yes, except more stabby.
Sure. But very close to that character, and it feels like it didn't feel like it was a ripoff. It just feels like, when you're writing in someone, it's like the first times that somebody starts writing, if they have a favorite author, it all sounds like it's coming from that person.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing, luckily, that sets this show apart, I would say, is the musical element. So the music.
Oh, see, I loved the musical element of it. So that's just like my thing, though. I love musicals.
Oh, yeah. I like the music too. I thought the music was really well done, and it makes it feel like it's its own thing to some extent. I would just say, between that character feeling so much like Gur,
yeah,
and the character of Adam feeling just like the boss aliens, right?
Oh.
It's too close to Invaders. You gotta kind of, I feel like it would be perfect if they brought him into the fold, and had him work on the show, because he hasn't made a show since. He did a pilot, but it didn't get picked up. And
he made a movie, didn't he? He made the Invader Zim movie.
I don't
on
know.
Netflix, I believe.
Is there an Invader Zim movie?
Yeah. I know, I haven't watched it. But from what I heard, it's on Netflix.
I haven't heard about that. My point is, like, he hasn't done a whole lot of stuff since Invader Zim. It only lasted 2 seasons because...
I'm so sad about that. I loved that show so much.
Yeah, it really wasn't in the right place being on Nickelodeon. And that was before, streaming took off and a show like this could really be successful and really find its niche.
Yeah.
Find its audience. And I just feel like he sort of deserves, like, a little bit of recognition here. He deserves the credit, not necessarily of... And I know Vizzy Pop came up with all these characters and probably put a whole lot of herself into this show. But when you're wearing, like, your inspiration on your sleeve like that...
Yeah, you kind of need to be like, hey, why don't you come in on this show? Maybe do a little storyboarding, maybe? So it doesn't feel like it's completely a ripoff of the original show.
Anyways, all I would say about that is that, like, that guy should maybe get involved because, he hasn't been doing a whole lot lately except comic books. And he started out
doing comic books.
Well, he started out as a comic book artist.
Does he draw?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, so he could be. I was thinking, I wasn't 100% sure on it, but he could be one of the animators maybe for Hazbin.
Or at the very least, or something like that. I mean, the thing is that, like, the style of the show, from the characters' eyes to the way that they move, it all feels very much like Crypt from his style. Yeah. And if you look back at other projects that he's done, some of the stuff that he did before Invader Zim was very adult themed and very wild, like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and just a lot of his projects feel like they would have really thrived sort of in this era of television. But that's an aesthetic sort of thing. It was a little bit distracting. It was a little bit distracting for me just because it felt so much of it felt like this is Jonan Vasquez. And I was surprised actually to learn that he wasn't working on it because it was it's so similar to stuff that he's done. And he really it's a shame that he hasn't had more projects just because you go into Hot Topic, you go into a lot of different places, Spencer's, Hot Topic, all that kind of stuff. And for the last 15 years, 20 years almost, Nickelodeon has been eating well off of his hard work. You know,
I have one of the Invader Zim shirts that has Gur on it from Hot Topic. So.
I hope that he at least got some money from that.
I hope so. Because I would feel so bad.
Yeah, it's crazy how popular. I'm sure he's got the rights to the characters just because in the comic books, he continued the story of Invader Zim. So I'm sure he's doing fine. And who knows if he would even want to work on this. And if he doesn't, then, that's a whole different thing. All I feel like is I'm sure that the Vizzy Pop has come out and said multiple times how inspired she was by him.
She has a whole collection of videos that says she's inspired by Invader Zim. Some live streams, even when it was just a pilot, she was saying a lot of this is inspired by Invader Zim.
So it's not a dig against her. I mean, and there are some things about this that really set the show apart from Invader Zim. It's definitely more of a, it's got the music. It's got a very different cast of characters. There's something just in me that has to compare it to Invader Zim because it's so similar, right? Yeah. In the art style and all of that. Overall, I feel like for me, the comedy wasn't the strongest thing about the show. I feel like it was funny, but sort of ambiently funny. There was stuff that was funny about it, but it didn't have strong jokes.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But I mean, I'm being very critical here. I enjoyed the show. I did. It sort of tells a story where there's an inversion of like you would think that everyone in heaven would be all good, everybody in hell would be all evil, but it goes to show like there's this gray area where there are good people in hell and there are bad people in heaven, obviously, from the Adam character.
Spoiler alert. If you haven't watched that yet.
Okay, fair enough. I feel like everybody who's watching this video is
probably watch it at this point, but just in case, spoiler alert,
spoilers,
there is some bad people in heaven and there's some good people in hell, as you saw at the end of the season 1.
Yeah, I felt like the moral messaging was a little bit mixed. Like, I just feel like it could have had more to say, like, about the morality. To me, it felt a little bit of an easy way out to make all of the hell characters very likable and very...
Well, it's just those specific characters, that are in the quote-unquote Hazbin Hotel. The rest of the hell is kind of shitty, as you've seen. There's a whole...
very bleak. And
Poison from Angel Dust, that was...
Yeah, there's some really, like, especially, with that character, very bleak, very, like... And that was the only episode, too, so a little bit...
Well,
not in a bad way, but kind of on...
In my opinion, I think they weren't 100% sure if they were going to get a season 2 or not, and they weren't 100% sure if they were going to, like... It was going to take off the way it did, because it's been years and years and years since the pilot took off.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like it was good. I would, if I had to give, and I haven't done this before, but if I had to give a rating, I would put this one at like a 7, just because there are things that I feel like could have been stronger, like...
Which is fine. 7's not bad.
7's not bad. I feel like the
I'm very biased, so...
I feel like the comedy could have been stronger, and I feel like, it would have been interesting if it had sort of more to say about morality and people changing. I feel like it touched on that as much as you would expect from an animated show like this. But this one falls into like a funny sort of place because it's very much a cartoon, but it's not for children. Like this is almost
definitely not for children. No.
In fact, this almost feels exclusively coded for millennials.
I mean, it probably is.
Like this feels like something that people in their late 20s, early 30s would enjoy almost more than anyone else.
27.
Oh, really?
They don't know that. No, shut up. You're not 18. You're 32. 31.
I'm cutting all this out. How dare you? Yeah, it was a strong show. In terms of, like, I feel like what really carried the show for me was the music. The music was really well done and really fun. And the animation did a lot of the things right that Invader Zim did right.
Yeah.
Like putting the camera in weird angles and funny places and moving things around. Fun camera work. A very expressive, very loud storytelling. You're
not gonna know this because this one is exclusively on the YouTube, on Finzi Pop's YouTube channel. But the voice actor for Invader Zim is in one of her newer stuff, Hell of a Boss. So.
Right. I have heard a little bit from you mostly about Hell of a Boss, but people really like that show as well, and that one's on YouTube. So maybe I should take a look at that, and maybe we could do an episode on that eventually.
I think you'd like it. It's a lot different than Hazbin.
Okay, so we could sort of compare and contrast there and see what we like about this versus what we like about that. And was that one a musical sort of thing as well?
No, it's more actual voice acting than anything. There's some musical scenes in it, but it's way less musically inclined than Hazbin was.
Well, that's really most of what I had to say, but what were your impressions going in as a fan and being excited about the series? Did it live up to your expectations?
Not 100%. I was really excited the first time about Hazbin Hotel when the pilot came out, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be so good! I can't wait to see it in like a bigger screen or like a bigger version of it. It's gonna be so awesome." I like the way all the characters act together. I like the musical portion of it. And then I had to wait years and years and years. I got over it a little bit, and I was like, I'm not 100% back into it. So my friend who was really, really, really excited about it was like, or has been a fan forever, and from the beginning, continued onward. I kind of dropped out for a good little bit there. She was like, "It's back," and I'm like, "It's back." They finally did it. They finally did what? And they finally got the show, and I was like, oh. So then I got back into it, and I, like you said, in the pilot they talked more about morality than they did in the actual show. So the pilot talked more. They had the whole first number in the beginning of the show was like if you saw the pilot. Like you've had to see the pilot to know that wasn't the beginning. The pilot was really the episode 0 of it. You know what I mean? But I enjoyed it. I do love the characters. I loved the twist of it. I also love everyone in it. I'm very biased towards Alex Brightman and Sheena. I forgot her last. I'm not saying her name right either. Sheena, who I love so much. Both Broadway stars.
Yeah, all of the voice actors do at various times musical numbers.
Yeah.
And it's really good music for, and not even just for, because a lot of the times you'll see an animated show where they do a musical number and it's just okay, it feels thrown together.
Yeah.
But this is specifically, it feels like this was made to be a musical, and it feels very musical. It feels like a musical film almost. Like it has that much emphasis put on the music and that much care taken to have.
If you want to talk about musical films, then there's 2 musical films that we could talk about.
Okay, well, we'll save that for a different episode. But yes, this girl loves her musicals.
I do. But yeah, so I really enjoyed how they actually detailed out the characters more. Like, for example, Angel Dust in the pilot was just the P word star.
Yeah, he was a very sort of one-dimensional character, and all of his jokes were very sort of crass.
And then he got the episode that got into what was really going on. It's like, oh, okay, And then the whole thing with Alistair, he, for some reason, his whole thing is like, wow, he's got a backstory now, because before it was just, oh yeah, he went from hell to somewhere, back to hell. Now he's back, and he's in Hazbin Hotel. And that was his whole story. Now we know that there's a different situation in that story now.
And the main character, what's her name? Charlie, right. So Alistair feels at certain times like he's trying to be her father, and maybe he's a little bit jealous of her dad. Like that comes off in the episode where we do finally meet
Lucifer.
The Lucifer character, right? So
he's just kind of goofy.
And that was sort of played as a joke and sort of like a one-off, but it's like, is that how their characters are going to develop? Is he going to feel more and more like there's a sort of competition there?
See, to me, it felt like it wasn't Alistair that was it felt like Alistair was trying to make the competition,
So I just felt like there was some competition there. Like he was trying to come off like as a father figure, or maybe just get in the way of them. But then I don't really understand his motivation if he's not, to an extent, like jealous of their relationship.
To piss off Lucifer, the devil.
Well, it never really explains why it would be pissed off at Lucifer.
Maybe this so-called chained chain is to him.
Oh, that would be interesting. So, spoiler, which we've already done. We do find out eventually that Alistair is in a contract with someone, so his
powers are diminished.
His powers are diminished, and he's sort of chained in servitude to someone else in this show.
So I think that might have been a little dig at that, because I think in that whole episode he was just trying to piss him off. Like, look, I've got your daughter. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, it's interesting like that. So the show does have some lore that's like interesting to get into that we sort of want to explore moving forward. The Lilith character who was introduced in the pilot finally has a little cameo at the end of the...
She wasn't introduced in the pilot in episode 1.
She
wasn't in the pilot.
It talks about her.
In the show, not in the pilot.
Oh, so the pilot's different than the first episode of Well, usually a pilot would be the first episode of the show. So I guess not. I guess I'll have to go back and maybe there's something that I'm missing there. Because I haven't seen that. I've only seen what's on Amazon.
Yeah. So she's mentioned the first time, and then at the end again she's mentioned. And she's sort of seen.
Yeah, so we see her at the end. That's going to be, I guess, something for the next season. Yeah, she's chilling. So there's some interesting stuff to look forward to. And I did like that the show seems to have an idea of the lore, where the characters are going. It's very plot heavy, which Invader Zim was not. Invader Zim, the thing that I think Invader Zim did better was that it had these very one-dimensional, clearly defined characters who you immediately sort of recognized, like where every joke was, like there were good setups for jokes just in who the characters were, and you could go back to them again and again and they would have something new, but it felt like it was coming from their character. This show, I didn't feel like I got to know the characters as well, even over an entire season.
Yeah.
And their personalities are a little bit more complicated. They're a little bit more dimensional. I guess, like, for example, Charlie. I would have liked to see Charlie, like, have more jokes maybe about her being either naive or innocent and just sort of being... She's like... Because she's the main character of the show and she's sort of the most naive and innocent, you want her to play sort of a straight man character. And the straight man character has nothing to do with her being a lesbian.
No.
I just mean in the sense that she's the character that's the sort of serious character that the bouncier, funnier characters can pop jokes off of.
Which is kind of what's shown in the pilot that you haven't seen. So
maybe it's a little bit better defined there.
Yeah.
But just from what I have seen, like they could have done more to make the characters stand out as unique and to have, like, I feel like with a show like this, you want the characters to be characters that, like, when a character, and I guess like Angel Dust, for example, like he's the only character who really feels like he has like a gimmick, and his thing is, haha, I'm a gay porn star. But there's not really much that they do with it that feels clever. Like all of the jokes relating to that were just like, haha, you're, and that, like, it just didn't feel like a well-written joke.
It's funny because how he's introduced literally in the pilot is all and I can do that for $1.
Right. So, I mean, he has a dimension, like there's jokes that you could write there, and I feel like they established the character, but like they need a stronger like writer's room. I feel like they need a stronger comedy writers making jokes for the show.
Well, I also feel like they might be doing that in the second season. The first season kind of felt rushed in a way to me. Like they weren't sure if they were going to get a second season. They weren't sure if this was going to go well or not.
Well, we can't say that it sounds rushed. I mean, people have been waiting for like 5 years for this.
Well, I shouldn't say rushed, but in a way, it's like it felt like I'm going to put as much as I can into season 1. That way, if I don't get a season 2, it felt like season 1 was closed.
Right. So they do cover a lot of story. And I like that. I like that there was a lot of story in the first season. But, story should really be in a cartoon. I feel like the story should be secondary to the jokes.
Yeah.
The jokes. And of course, the music was great.
I couldn't believe they actually involved Husk as much as they did. Because Husk was just a one-off character that Alistair kind of went, "You're here now."
So if you really enjoyed this show, and I enjoyed it, I feel like go back, watch Invader Zim, and you'll see exactly what I mean about the jokes. Like, just overall, if I had to rank them in terms of being funny, with Invader Zim being like a solid 8 out of 10, this would fall closer to like a 6 or a 5, just on terms of the humor alone. I feel like the humor doesn't really compare. So there's a lot that's good. Jokes, they could have used stronger comedy.
The maid's name was Nifty.
The maid's name was Nifty.
It was. I just remembered.
That's good. That's good. Now we know. So, yeah, if you see Nifty and you know Invader Zim, you know that she's
very much.
She's Gur.
Yes.
She is Gur.
Yes.
She's Gur in a dress.
Well, she's less murderous than Gur, but yes.
More murderous.
More murderous than Gur.
More murderous than Gur. So, fun character, but yeah, you want to see. I would very much like to see him have some role in the show or in a future project with Izzy Pop, because if the inspiration's there, hey, what's he been doing for so long? I really think bring him in, and he was a comic book writer and made comics basically by himself.
He could probably add a lot to this show
he
too.
He could definitely add a lot to the writing. So this show's probably strongest in terms of the creativity of the animation and strongest in the music. But yeah, the writing felt kind of weak to me. And why not bring somebody like that on? That's dream casting right there.
Mm-hmm. I'm also really into like lore and all that, so I love all the little lore that's like dropped.
Hey, and if you're gonna go somewhere for lore, you're talking about the Christian mythology of heaven and hell. We've got a lot to work with there. There's a lot of mythology that you can play with if you want to talk heaven and hell. If you want to, poke fun of or put your own spin on. And they do a little bit. It just felt like, well, the lore wasn't the issue. The whole issue for me was just...
It felt like Invader Zim. That's really what it was for you.
And that wasn't a negative. No, that wouldn't be a weakness in my opinion. I'd like to see them, either move beyond that or bring that guy in. One or the other. They could either go... And at this point, like, don't change the whole voice of the show, but bring that guy in. That would add a whole dimension to...
Maybe bring him in for the jokes.
Bring him in for the jokes, because that was the weakest part for me. Was the humor was only so-so. It wasn't as funny as it could be. Now, I will say it was very, like, emotionally effective. It felt like you really care about the characters, and there are sad moments, and it's like, oh, don't be sad. Get glad.
Yeah. But again, to me, it just kind of felt like if it was more... The only quote-unquote bad thing I can say is that it felt like if they didn't get a season 2, everything was pushed into season 1.
Yeah, it did feel like certain things were rushed. I am glad that it ended with the big battle between
Yes.
heaven and hell. That would have been such a letdown if they just like, oh, we'll see you in the next season. I would have hated that. So I'm glad they did that. But I feel like maybe we shouldn't have even gotten to that part of the story yet. I don't know. It felt like, let's spend more time in the hotel. Let's
spend more time getting around these characters.
Maybe that's just what I expect from animation and cartoons, is like, put the funny stuff first and foremost. It should be, in my opinion, it should all be built around these interactions between these characters. And, the overarching story is sort of secondary to that. Yeah. But, maybe that's a weakness, or maybe that's just my expectation from what I see a cartoon as being primarily about. Like, primarily it's a cartoon. It should make you laugh. And the musical numbers were great, but I wanted more comedy, But that's just me.
It's just, for me, it was overall that it just, season 1 felt like everything and too much was in it all at once. And that's the only thing I have to complain about. Otherwise, I loved the whole thing, so I can't say anything.
It was a really fun show, and there aren't enough good creative shows. I love that YouTube creators are getting this sort of limelight and getting the ability to reach a wider fan base and come out with something that's, thank God, not a sequel or a previously established brand like a comic book that we've seen a million times. It's something new. It's very much inspired by something else, but it is something new.
Yeah.
And that I like.
Plays a little on nostalgia, but that's okay.
A little bit. All right. Anything else you want to say?
Nothing really. Alistair's hair changed, which kind of upset me because I liked the black, but otherwise it was good.
All right. So, if you haven't already, subscribe, like, and leave us a comment. Say something. I'm giving up on you.
I hate you. No.
Willing to make another video.
Are you? Are you really?
Yeah. So join us for the next one. And hit that bell. And leave a comment.
I don't know what to say about that.
Still learning to walk.
Okay, goodbye.
Do.